And you guys are going to help me. So these are all the people that we're going to talk about in the course of the Enlightenment. Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Any guesses where he's from? Voltaire, the Baron de Montesquieu, and we're actually not going to talk about her because that would be one too many people. We're going to talk about that. What? All right, we jumped too far apparently. There we go. All right, so Thomas Hobbes, one more time. What country is he from, Sean?
Oh, this guy?
Yeah.
Oh, he's from England.
Good job. He's from England. Grows up during the English Civil War, which is a conflict between which two people? English King Charles I and the English people led by Oliver Cromwell. Nice job, Nick. See, Nick, you are now forever immortalized in video. Well done. All right, and so because he's growing up during this war, he is convinced that people are
evil. Selfish.
Yeah.
Wicked, selfish.
Right. Wicked, selfish, evil. Nice and simple. And so because of that, Max.
Am I on TV?
Yes. Fortunately, you're too far away from the mic to pick that up. Because he believes that people are naturally evil and wicked and selfish, Max, Hobbes believes that the best form of government is
Put the biggest jerk in charge.
And we call that?
Absolute monarchy.
Well done. Absolute monarchy, except in this case, you put the biggest jerk in charge, as Max said. You put the most evil, selfish, wicked person in charge. And at that point, what's everybody else's response to him?
I hate you.
I hate you, but...
You're bigger and stronger than me. You're very scary.
Right, you're very scary, so I'm going to do what you tell me to do, because you terrify me. Do what? He's not so much concerned with divine right, because in his mind, and I don't really know what his religious beliefs were. I mean, he's in England, so he might be Anglican. People that grow up in wartime environments, though, oftentimes have crises of faith, where they lose faith in God because they're surrounded by death and destruction. But he's not as concerned with the divine right aspect of absolute monarchy as he is with public safety. And so in his mind, if you put the worst person in power, the most dangerous person in power, everybody else is going to behave because they're going to be terrified of getting stomped on.
What's his title?
Hobbes' title?
Or occupation?
For him, we're not so much concerned with his occupation.
He was an author.
Now, Max, one of the terms that you need to know with Hobbes is he comes up with something called a social contract. Now, Josh, in contracts, there's two parties. Each party is supposed to hold up their end of the agreement. If one side breaks the contract, boys, stop. If one side breaks the contract, the agreement's over and they probably fight. So what Hobbes is talking about here is a slightly different contract. He's saying that the people, in whatever government chose to adopt his theory, the people should give up pretty much all their rights to this absolute monarch in exchange for safety. So, no freedom of expression, no right to say whatever you want, no freedom of religion, none of those freedoms that we assume that we have. Instead, no freedoms, no rights, except those that this crazy absolute monarch chooses to give you. But that would keep people safe. Because everybody would be too terrified of him to break the rules. Now, let me ask you this. Does this have any chance of working?
Yeah.
Yes.
Why?
Because fear rules the government.
Right. Fear is kind of effective sometimes, isn't it? You guys remember we talked about Machiavelli back in the Renaissance? Remember what he said about power and about rulers? Better to be feared than loved. So here again, you see the same idea 500 years later. The same thing Machiavelli said back in the Renaissance, you're seeing Thomas Hobbes kind of elaborate on. You don't need to be loved, dude. Let them be terrified of you, and people will obey. Max?
I mean, that does have a chance of working, but, there's like always those crazy group of people who don't agree with it, and they'll attack it. They have the chance of attacking the normal situation, which takes away the safety aspect, so like in the rights, if you're not
Right. Well, and so as long as you could create an environment where this one guy really could crack down when he needs to and deal with people with lethal force, it might work. But you're right. If all it is a theory and be like, oh, yeah, I'm big and bad and I don't care about anybody, yeah, then it would just be total chaos. Would this be a happy place to live? Would you be terrified pretty much every day of your life?
It's like Big Brother.
Yeah, it kind of is, isn't it? Nice job. Good connection. Your English teacher would be proud.
My dad makes me do that.
Oh, okay. Well, either way. Yeah. Yeah. All right, last thing you need to know. Who can tell me what this word means? Very good. And you guys see the Pirates of the Caribbean movie with the Kraken?
Yeah.
Oh, I saw that one.
Okay. Leviathan is fairly similar. Gigantic sea monster. Bigger than the Kraken.
What?
Yes.
Wait, could he eat the Kraken?
Well, it's mythical, so no, I don't have a picture.
Can we make a video of the sea monster and the Kraken fighting? Google images. Yeah, I want to see the Google images.
How about if we're good, we'll bring it up at the end. All right, so Hobbes' idea, and the only reason we're talking about giant sea monsters, which I know is going to distract you for a long, long time, he says that that's the kind of power a government should have. If there really is a giant, yes, if there really is a gigantic sea monster, is there anything in the ocean that's going to mess with it? When it swims through, does everybody else run and scatter? That's his vision. That's his vision of how society should function. If the government has that kind of awesome power, nobody will ever rise up, nobody will ever rebel, nobody will ever break any law ever, because they will be terrified of the government's power. Happy place to live? Possibility of working? Yeah. What would this look like in a school? Given that this is where we're going. Armed guards. No, like this is what your project is going to be. Metal detectors. What else? Way more security cameras. What, Josh? Whips? Yeah, the teachers get whips to use on students. So like, Max, stop talking. Max, stop complaining about being whipped. Max, you're still complaining. Actually, come to think of it. See, this is where I have to now be careful that we're recording this. Does that sound like the kind of place where you would walk down the halls and be enjoying the experience? Oh, you don't get headphones in this kind of place.
They would be wireless, and I'd put them under my hair. So they can see. Well, you had to cut your hair because shave your head. What? I would paint them the same colors, but you don't.
We give you uniforms that probably look like prison uniforms.
Yeah, there's a prison something bright pink.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's in Arizona.
And it's really funny. Yeah, and they're like demoralized and demasculated.
Okay. So does that give you some perspective of what a school could look like if they followed Hobbes' philosophy? Okay. Now, flip back in your packet to example number 1, the wallet. For all these examples, we're going to ask you to predict what you think Hobbes believes people would do. Example 1 in your packet. So, we're all on example number 1. At the very bottom, of example 1, it says, Thomas Hobbes would say that people would. So, based on what you just learned about Hobbes, he would say that if the average person walks down the hallway and sees this wallet, what are they going to do? Right. No question whatsoever. 100% certainty. Hobbes would say every single human being on the planet would take that money. That's his take on humanity. What about on the exam question? Take it and use it? Absolutely no question, because all men are selfish and wicked and greedy. Do you think it would kind of be sad to be Hobbes?
Oh, yeah, you sound like you're very happy.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a pretty negative outlook on life, right? Yeah, he does have a bit of a frowny face.
He looks like kind of a colonial Hulk Hogan.
Colonial Hulk Hogan. I like that. Okay. Person number 2. We are not going in order down the sheet. We're going to jump around a little bit, kind of like House of Pain. And you're all way too young to get that joke. Okay. Never mind, you missed it.
I want to hear the joke.
That's too bad. Listen to the recording.
I'm trying to start a music career, so I need to make all my good sounds for the recording. So when the recording goes online, people will hear my beautiful voice, and they'll sign me, and I can do a song with Justin Bieber and King.
And I think if you throw in a couple wikis, you're right there. Okay. Voltaire. François Marie Arouet. All right, so his full name, François. F-R. Oh, Sean. For Voltaire. All right, full name, François. F-R-A-N-C-O-I-S.
That's actually French Soviets.
No. So that's François. His middle name is Marie. Marie. M-A-R-I-E. And his last name is Arouet. A-R-O-U-E-T. Phone home. Because Voltaire is the name that he uses in his position as an author. No. Because Voltaire is going to write, boys, Voltaire is going to write any number of books that people don't like. He's going to insult any number of wealthy and powerful people. And so he does it with a fake name, Voltaire. No. Now, despite all that, he still gets arrested several times and spends lots of time in prison for insulting all these people. But here's the interesting thing about Voltaire. You don't need to write all this down, by the way. But let me give you the highlights. He doesn't like the church because he thinks they're lying to everybody. He doesn't like the nobles because he's convinced they're all selfish and corrupt and just abusing the people. He doesn't like the peasants because he thinks they're ignorant, stupid, superstitious. He didn't like blacks. He didn't like Jews. He didn't like women. He pretty much looked down on everyone. He was fairly convinced that he was the smartest person and everybody else is stupid. Here's the interesting thing. He believed in freedom of speech. Voltaire actually says at one point, I may disagree with what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. Now, look back at the list of all the people he hates and dislikes and doesn't think much of. And yet, he's the guy standing up and saying everybody should be allowed to say what they believe without punishment. Wouldn't you think he'd be the guy saying, you sit down, you sit down, you sit down, you're all stupid? And instead, he's the guy standing up saying, you know what? Say what you think. You have that right. And nobody should take that right away from you.
I think he's on. I think it's because he's the author.
He also believes, despite the fact that he seriously distrusts the church, he believes that every person has the right to believe in their own religion and not be persecuted for it. Voltaire is kind of a confusing person. Because it seems like he's doing one thing and saying another. Yeah, Sean.
Drug user? Sounds like it.
So, best form, belief in humans is that they're very flawed. They're very flawed, but they have the right to be that way. That humans are very flawed, but they have the right to say what they think and believe what they think.
Did they have superheroes back then?
Of course they didn't, Max. Whatever makes you feel good.
So when you look at Voltaire's idea of a good government, is he going to trust power in the hands of all the people?
Sure. No.
No, absolutely not, because he dislikes most of society. So his best form of government is what? An enlightened monarchy. Now, what do we mean by an enlightened monarch?
But it's different when he made it up.
Is this like the Hobbes monarch?
Nope.
No. He's not tiny.
It's a more fair and just.
Yeah. It's somebody who's going to allow people to say what they think and believe what they think. And not necessarily agree with it, but give them that freedom. Still have one guy in charge, still have one guy who's going to make the rules, but someone who is at least tolerant.
Haven't they already had monarchies though?
Sometimes.
Why would you redo that?
Because you sometimes didn't. Sometimes you had absolute monarchs that absolutely abused their power. And so Voltaire is saying we need this all the time. Not just like once in a while in between corrupt monarchs, but this is the best form of government. Right. John, what were you going to ask? It's a long and complex answer, but the gist of it is Max, he didn't think that they pursued the kind of lifestyle that he thought people should live. Because because basically he was racist. So he's not necessarily taking the time to get to know people. So, what would this look like in a school? Max. What, Josh? Discrimination?
A lot of discrimination, but they would still be not go too far with it.
All right, so still a lot of discrimination, but also some tolerance. Nick? Sean? Okay, so we might actually see segregation, where you put people in groups and you keep those groups separate from each other. Okay? Keegan? Boys? Yeah. Isn't that kind of what we have? Yeah. I mean, in some ways, this parallels what you've got. I mean, you guys are free to get involved in things like student government and express your opinion. I love watching the campaign movies that people make when they're running for class office because, like, I'm going to fight for more vending machines and better lunches in the cafeteria and, like, I'm going to get a slushy machine, like, all that. And then, like, what happens? Yeah, do what you're told. None of those things are happening. But good job campaigning.
We didn't even get the electoral president.
I know.
Who's lame?
Well, your class is lame.
Well, I didn't know who this kid was until he was speaking in front of us.
Well, Sean, you should run for class president.
Oh my God. That'd be awful. I nominate Sean.
The thing is, like, you don't have a rule over anything.
I know, right?
Josh, you've never even been involved. How do you know?
Pretty obvious.
Really?
What's the school allow you to do?
You'd be surprised.
They want though.
I sponsored classes for 6 years. I know what they're allowed to do.
They can go to like.
They're allowed to paint stuff.
This is what I got.
Gotta paint
The
stuff.
president? Why? The whole class?
No, like the whole class.
We don't do it for no reason.
They have to like. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later. All right, moving on.
That's a big nose.
Big nose.
That's a big nose. Yeah. Actually, we're going to hold off on Montesquieu for a second. We're going to come back to him. We'll come back to him. All right. What's up? What?
Interesting notes for the last guy.
Anything that you thought was interesting?
I can assassinate Sean right now.
Max, stop. Stop. Sean, sit up.
Stretching buddy like.
Okay. John Locke. John Locke is probably the guy that we're going to hear about more than any other Enlightenment philosopher. And I'm guessing that as we go through this slide on him, you're going to see some things that look very, very familiar. John Locke's take on humanity is he actually thinks people are pretty reasonable and people are pretty responsible. And if you give them the chance, more often than not, people will make the right decision. It doesn't mean all the time, but more often than not, people are responsible and they'll do the right thing. Now, if that is true, if that's what people are like, can people be trusted with power?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so John Locke's ideal form of government is what? Democracy. Put power in the hands of the people and let them be responsible. Don't take your chances with one king who may or may not be responsible. Put your power in the hands of society where most people are responsible. Haley? Well, there wouldn't be a monarch. We would just let everybody... Oh, his position? He's another author. Now, if we give people the power and we let people shape and run the government, Locke believes there has to be something that everybody gets, something that is guaranteed, something that will make sure that even if we have one of those oops moments where we're not responsible, that there's something there to protect us. In this case, natural rights. Locke believes that every single human being on the planet, man, woman, black, white, purple, whatever,
Purple. I mean, are Smurfs or something out there? Smurfs are blue. Oh, Papa's supposed to be purple.
Locke believes that all these people have fundamental rights. He calls them natural rights. Now, you look at that phrase. Josh, what are the natural rights that Locke believes people should have? Okay, take your time.
Life, liberty, and property.
Life, liberty, property. Where have you heard that before or something like it?
Life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness.
All right, where have you heard life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness?
Boy Scouts. Some guy.
Oh, in the Pledge of Allegiance.
That's a big document, Josh. This document.
Boys, the Declaration. Thomas Jefferson says, all men are endowed by their Creator the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Where did he get this idea? He gets it from John Locke, who much earlier states that people have 3 guaranteed rights if they are alive on this planet. The right to life, the right to not have their life taken from them. When would that happen? All right, death penalties. Or if you had an absolute monarch, they just wanted to kill people. Max, stop. Sean. So Locke would say that people have a natural right to live and not have their life taken from them. Whether by an absolute monarch or a member of society, whatever. This is a guaranteed right that cannot be taken away. Liberty. What does that mean? What is that right protecting against?
Your freedom, humanity, your rights, what you're allowed to do.
I heard it.
Over there. Come on, Keegan.
Somebody said it.
Freedom.
Slavery. The right to not be enslaved by your government or by somebody else. The right to not have your freedom taken from you. And then this last one, property. What do we mean by that?
Just stuff you own, you can't get stolen from by the
Right. Your stuff should not allow to be taken from you by the government or by somebody else. Because with an absolute monarchy, he could say, you know what? I want your house. You're going to have to leave now. Or he could say, I am going to raise taxes on you from 20% of your income to 90% of your income. Deal with that. Locke would say, no, you can't. You do not have the right to deprive me of my property. Now, what does Thomas Jefferson turn that last one into? Pursuit of happiness. How is that different? All right, it's what makes you happy. Is that more clear or less clear?
Less clear.
Less clear, because the things that make some of you happy honestly terrify me. Well, the things that makes Josh happy at the moment do not make me happy.
Oh, that was from the pen. I want that. Then he took it.
So right now, this is violating my pursuit of happiness.
But your pursuit of happiness violates our pursuit of happiness.
Absolutely.
Locke is always wrong.
And there's the problem, and that's why John Locke doesn't say pursuit of happiness, he says property.
He's smarter than Thomas Jefferson.
So, last thing that John Locke says about government is that the government has to exist to protect these rights. And if government's not doing that, if government is violating these rights, what do people have an obligation to do? Rebel and overthrow their government. And it's kind of funny because he doesn't offer this up as a choice. It's not like, if your government's corrupt, you should think about it. He's like, no, you have an obligation to take to the streets and overthrow your government if it's abusing your rights.
Can you sue the president? Absolutely.
So, go back to example number 1. Go back to example number 1. Go back to example number 1. Go back to example number 1.
Found it. Wait, no, I didn't.
You've got one spot left to fill in. What does John Locke think would happen if there's $100 in a wallet in the hallway?
They're gonna leave it. They're gonna return it.
Most of them will return it, not all of them.
Most of the time, people will pick it up and return it. Because Locke says most of the time, people are reasonable and responsible. And if we look at example number 2,
We'll turn it in. Most will turn it.
most of the time, people would pick up that exam key and they would turn it right back to the teacher and say, here, you dropped this.
And the teacher would be like, good job.
You get bullied. I know. You do that.
What would this look like in a school? If we assume that most of the time people do what they're supposed to.
It'd be like Jack Black's School of Rock. Or the classroom, individual classroom.
Yeah,
The school is more like Hobbes school.
it kind of would. Well, I don't know that this school is more like Hobbes' school.
The private school was very heavy uniform, government.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, so the two schools in School of Rock.
Yeah.
John? Yeah. Locke's version of life probably reflects this school. Because right now, we let you guys be fairly ridiculous without excessive punishment. I mean, can you imagine what would happen to the 5 of you on a fairly regular basis if this was a Hobbesian school?
I would be dead.
Dead.
Yeah,
Actually, I probably wouldn't act like this.
right,
I'd probably like try and tickle the armed guard or be funny and then get my head down off.
right. And so notice what changes in behavior. In Hobbes' system, people are terrified of the consequences, and so they don't misbehave. But when you open it up to something like Locke, where most of the time people are responsible, what does that also allow?
Abuse of power. Well, not power, abuse of rights and stuff.
Yeah. It allows for sometimes for you not to be responsible.
Yeah.
That's why. I mean, nothing's scary for minors these days.
Except
Execution.
Right. All right, one more guy to show you for today. And I have a funny feeling that some of you are going to have real issues with him. All right, so back to your chart. Back to your chart.
Yeah.
Back to your chart.
I'm flipping.
Michael, back to your chart.
Flip, Michael. Flipping.
Going the wrong way. All right, Jean-Jacques Rousseau.
Good job, buddy. Good job, Michael. Good job.
you want a Michael chip?
Rousseau says people are basically good all the time. All people are basically good all the time. But in Rousseau's opinion, it's not people that are the problem, it's society. His vision is that if we could take 100 people and put them on a deserted island with all the things they needed to survive, but none of the distractions and negative parts of modern day society, just like put them on in their own little community and walk away and come back in a year and see how they're doing.
They'd kill you.
Rousseau says you would come back to find a flourishing island community where everybody cooperated, everybody sacrificed a little bit to make sure everybody else was okay. You wouldn't find any selfishness, any greed. You would find total harmony. If you asked Thomas Hobbes what would happen if you dropped 100 people off on an island and walked away for a year and came back, right, Hobbes would say you'd come back and you'd find one guy left.
Really fat.
And so you need to see that Rousseau is seeing the world very, very differently from people like Hobbes. Rousseau really does see the best in everyone.
What a great guy.
We love Bruce.
John?
Yeah.
I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
You're Disney.
Max, stop. Stop. All right, if we jump down here to the bottom third, you're going to see a repeat of a phrase that we already used once, social contract. Who used that phrase the first time? Hobbes. And Hobbes said in his social contract, people give up all their rights, and in return the government does what? Right. It saves everybody from killing each other, but that's about all you get. In Rousseau's social contract, he says that actually what's going to happen is everybody's just going to agree to work together and be happy. It's a very, very different social contract. It's one that's based on cooperation and selflessness. Josh, put it down. Here's another interesting one. The very last bullet point before we get to best form of government. Rousseau believed in total equality. It means no upper class and lower class. It means no gender issues where men are better than women or women are better than men. It means no racial issues. It means no religious issues. Total equality. Everybody is the same simply by virtue of being human.
Cool. Wait, so Mr. Horsey doesn't get any
So if we come down to his best form of government, can somebody tell me what direct democracy is?
There's no middleman president. There's just people.
Right. There's just people. You don't have elected officials. Anytime there's a question about what should be done, every single person gets a vote. So rather than what we have right now with a president and Congress debating taxes and debt and all these things, every single person in the country would just cast their vote, majority rules. Now, what's the upside of that? All right, individual rights, and the people get what they want. What's the downside of that? All right, idiots get to vote. But we're not breaking people into classes, so we're not looking at anybody as an idiot. We're not looking at anybody as inferior. What's the other downside of this? Think of it logistically. Every single issue, we need 330 million votes taken. We'd be voting every day. Yeah.
We need new bathrooms in Alabama.
You're right. And the people wouldn't necessarily know what the best thing was to do. So if there was a vote about, textbook adoption in California, people here would be like, yeah, I don't care, whatever. And so you'd have a vote that wouldn't represent an informed opinion on the issue. Or bathrooms in Alabama, which they probably need. I would vote for that.
I've never been to Alabama.
They don't have bathrooms there?
Oh, stop.
They don't?
Yes. Alabama has the equipment.
You mean these two? So they do some sports things?
There are 3 people in this classroom that honestly believe that Alabama didn't have any bathrooms. This is my life. Okay. So, what would this look like in a school? Haley? Awesome. Boys, focus. Haley, say it again. There would be no honors or academic or AP classes. There probably would not be grades. And once somebody had determined that you knew what you needed to know, you would simply move on to the next topic. What else might happen?
They get lazy.
What about grade levels? What about freshman, sophomore, junior, senior? You wouldn't need it. Once you had mastered the curriculum, you could go, whether you are 14 or 25. What else? If everybody is good, what goes away? Rules. If everybody is good, do we need a tardy policy?
No.
Do we need an honor code?
No.
Do we need detention? Do we need expulsions? No. Think about that kind of environment for a moment.
That'd be pretty sweet.
Flip to example 3. Our cookie incident. According to Jean-Jacques Rousseau, what happens if somebody goes through the lunch line with 5 cookies and gets charged for 4?
You wouldn't be paying for cookies.
Rousseau would say every single person would correct the mistake and either give back the cookie or give them the 75 cents. Why wouldn't you? It's the right thing to do. People are always good.
Well, there wouldn't be any cookies.
Sure there
But
would.
it does say they're corrupted by society, so little things like that.
Everybody's doing the same.
Right, but if we could remove the corrupting influences in society, which are people's willingness...
Influence in society would be something like making mistakes in your favor, and you can't remove that. So
No, making mistakes is a very human thing, which you're not going to remove.
if a mistake is made by someone else in your favor, you'll start to get the taste of, hey, as long as other people are stupid, I can get...
No, because the corrupting influence is people's selfishness. So if you could remove selfishness, it wouldn't be an issue. It would be no different than, here, you made a mistake.
Stuff like that needs the selfishness.
Only if you choose to go that route. All right, yeah, Keegan? He didn't believe in what? Well, he acknowledges through this last part that people become corrupted by society. He acknowledges that people eventually choose not to be good. Josh? But he also acknowledges that this is choice. That people choose not to be good. But that our basic human nature, our default setting, when we are born... John, put your phone away.
John, in the front of the room.
That is disrespect.
Shh. Really? From you guys?
I've never hated that one out of
Our default setting when we are born, we come out good. And then over time, people will choose to make bad decisions, like texting in class.
Isn't Josh supposed to see up
If we look at example number 4, this one's going to get tricky. Example number 4, your best friend in a long-term relationship cheats. What does Jean-Jacques Rousseau think that the average person would do? Haley? All right, A, it probably would have never happened in the first place, except clearly in this instance, your friend has become corrupted by society's influence. So, as the witness, Rousseau says,
half and half. It would tell.
Among 3 individuals, they can try to create an agreement.
what's the real issue here? The real issue is what's the right choice? Is it loyalty or is it truth? So what do you think Rousseau would value more? Coin flip?
He says humans are good when they come down to what that specific thinks, what that specific person thinks is the right choice. It's not like the choice would be the same.
Well, we are believing at this point in some sort of higher values, that there are fundamentally good things that apply to all people, that there is a right way.
Can we all read it on the captain?
Stop. No. All right. We're going to call that good as far as the notes go. So now what you need to do is turn past the note sheet to the project. And actually, you know what? For a moment, turn past the project. Boys, stop. Max, stop. On the page beyond where the project is, you have a small chart and then a line. What I want you to do is I want you to take 5 minutes and kind of synthesize all the information that we just went through. You've got Hobbes and Locke and Rousseau and Voltaire. So on that small chart, you need to give a basic description of what each of those men believes about human nature and about government. And then what you want to do on that line on the bottom, it's a progression scale. And so on the left side would be the people that most firmly believe in a powerful monarchy. And on the right side are going to be the people that most willingly put power in the hands of the people. So what I want you to do is I want you to take the 4 people that we covered today and put them on that spectrum where you think they go.